extend that all-time record of their own making. UConn still undefeated in national title games, now tied with UNC for the third most titles in Division I history with those 6. You can argue about who you like. You can argue about who you want. You can't argue. It's the UConn Huskies standing there alone again.
I mean, Coach, on every level, offense.
Champion since Florida in 2006, 2007, another dominant win and a run to another natty. Avery Johnson, Tim Doyle. Avery, what did we just witness here in Arizona?
We witnessed a team that is just outstanding. They have a complete identity. They're a balanced basketball team. Let me repeat. They're not an offensive or a defensive team. They're both. They're balanced. They dominated this game, and you're talking about a coach in Danny Hurley who is preeminent head basketball coach in terms of his scouting reports. They came in with a plan to play Edey one-on-one early in the game, and they basically wore him down. My major key was UConn getting 5 guys in double figures. They got 4.5, and that's one of the reasons they cut down the nets.
Well, I'll give you a stat here. Purdue made 1 3.
Yep.
The entire game. Do you remember what we said beforehand, how many threes they were going to have to make?
12.
They made 1. And when you look at UConn from an overall program standpoint, 2 things stand out to me. Consistency and discipline. You know what they shot in the first half? 48.4%. You know what they shot in the second half? The exact same. 3 threes in the first half, 3 threes in the second half. Balance, defense, nothing. They moved the basketball, single-digit turnovers. This was utter domination.
Zach Edey got his 37 points, 10 rebounds. They were trying to go from one and done to one shining moment. Instead, it's UConn with another shining moment here in Arizona. And you talk about the complete domination. They have won now 12 games by 13 or more points in the past 2 tournaments. The other thing that stood out here is the fact that Donovan Clingan, and this is what I was counting because you taught me this, Tim, intimidates. He didn't have big numbers in terms of stats, but when guys came in, he was disruptive.
Yeah, I remember Braden Smith missing a few layups, just looking for him. You know, he is the consistent factor on last year's team and this year's team. I know Tristan Newton was great and he was the most outstanding player, but the difference for this squad and what made them elite was Clingan down low.
And they had a stretch in the game where Zach Edey, independent of what his stats are, he looked exhausted.
Yep, he did.
And it was Clingan running him. Then here comes Johnson, the backup center. He only had 4 points. He fouled out, but those 4 points was critical. And remember what I said before the game. Because of the quality and depth of UConn, you know what this bench scoring was?
Yep.
13-2.
Yep.
Big, that was the difference.
Also, too, you want to talk about domination? We talked about the 3-point field goals. 1 of 7 for Purdue, 6 of 22 for UConn. We talked about the bench points, but also the assists. 18-8, Tim, sharing the rock.
Yeah, and only 8 turnovers. You know, Coach, I was amazed watching them throughout this tournament. Their ball movement and the way they move from an offensive perspective, what I attest that to, obviously, is Dan Hurley, but also you got veteran guards. Spencer was fabulous on both ends. Spencer, Newton, older guys, really got them into such a great rhythm each and every time down the floor.
Yeah, and when you look at Newton, this kid was a maestro.
Awesome.
He was unbelievable.
The mop.
He was the man, the most outstanding player for a reason. He just makes big shots. He has a calm presence on the floor. He never really gets out of kilter. What did he have? 7 assists and no turnovers.
None.
What more can you ask
How's
for?
your assist to turnover ratio? Pretty darn good. And you talk about this team in terms of how good they have been this tournament. They trailed for just 6 minutes and 22 seconds. 6 minutes and 22 seconds. That's all they trailed for in this entire tournament. And again, here they are standing at the tippy top of the college basketball world. Avery, what does this mean for Dan Hurley and the Huskies?
Well, Dan Hurley specifically, he's going into a different stratosphere as a coach now. When you can win back-to-back championships, especially in this era of NIL, transfer portal, and then, you know, players in today's game, you know, they want you to be a player's coach. He's not giving up his identity. He's coaching just like his dad coached in high school, just like his brother coaches. He's, as Tim said, they're about discipline, determination, details, and he's tough on his players, and he's not backing up.
Well, you know what Dan Hurley said when he got the job? He said, "Get us now."
Get us now.
And man, that is so true. There's another championship that the Big Ten has lost. They haven't won a championship since the year 2000. UConn, on the flip side, this is their 6th title since 1999.
It's absolutely incredible. They've never lost a tournament game here in the state of Arizona, and they're 6-0 all-time in the title game. They get to the title game, they don't lose. We look at the run for Purdue, right? They were the laughingstock of college basketball 1 year ago. They wanted to be the last ones laughing. They had a valiant run. Zach Edey leading this team, and more experienced guards. What does it say, Tim, about the way that Purdue rallied back to come back this season and get to the title game?
Well, that says a lot about the squad, because you know all offseason it had to suck. There's no other way to say it. And it was all about getting to a Final Four this year or bust. And I thought they overcame a lot of mental hurdles throughout this tournament, and they were not at their best in Saturday's win over NC State. But they figured out a way. We said before the game they were going to have to be at their best to beat a team like UConn. Lance Jones got in foul trouble. He was never a factor. Foster Loyer for Fletcher Loyer was never a factor in this game. So Edey got his numbers, coach, but he got no help.
He didn't get any help. But also, Purdue, they can raise their heads up high.
Yeah.
Outstanding season. They spent most of this season ranked in the top 5. And they had more weight on their shoulders, as much as UConn, because of their recent history.
I think they had more. I think they had more.
Yeah. Coming into the NCAA tournament. And they overcame a lot of obstacles. They made it to the championship game. But again, it's hard for one player to beat a well-oiled machine of a team like UConn. And when Fletcher Loyer comes up empty, 0 for 5, and you talked about threes, they only made 1 3. It's not even about the attempt makes. They only attempted 7.
Well, they only took 2 in the first half.
Yeah.
And you know why? Because that's the scouting report.
Yeah.
You know, like, there's a reason why some guys are open on the floor. I want to give you credit, too. You said the bench was going to be a difference. Purdue got really 2 meaningful points. It was that putback dunk by Heidi. Besides that, they had really no meaningful points. Diarra came in, he had a couple of baskets, banged down a shot. I thought Matt Painter made a critical error. And, you know, you can nitpick and stuff, but the game was tied, and he took Edey out in the first half to try to give him a blow. That possession, UConn ran a play, and Klingon got a layup and won. Guys, the game was never tied again. He ended up putting Edey in, I think, the next dead ball, and I don't think it would have changed the outcome of the game, but that's a game you got to leave Zach out there.
That little 4-0 run during that stretch, or 6-0.
It was big, wasn't it?
That was huge.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you.
He took him out to get him a breather. I get it. He was certainly tired in this game, but if you go back and watch the play, they ran a simple play. Klingon caught the ball, made a layup. It was an N1. It was like, oh, that was just way too easy. So, you know, I mean, Edey gave us the world today, but I think Matt did make an error taking him out.
And unlike Connecticut, Purdue really doesn't have a backup center like Samson.
Nope. And unfortunately, the drought continues for the Big Ten. The last team to win a national championship all the way back to 2000, Michigan State. And for UConn, the dominance continues. Were you surprised, Avery, by the fact that this was a 15-point victory? We thought it might be a little closer, but it was just rinse and repeat for the Huskies.
Well, remember on our pregame show, my prediction was 82-68.
Yeah.
I thought UConn would win by 14 or more
We both
points.
did.
So I'm not really surprised. Again, coming into this game, the confidence level that UConn plays at, and they have what I call spurt ability. They can go on those 8-2 runs, 6-0 runs, just when they need it to create some separation.
And we saw that. We saw that with your guy, Samson Johnson. We saw Alex Caravan get a big bucket. We saw that, and they kept stretching their lead as it got to 18, Tim.
Yeah, if this was a 7-game series, they would have swept Purdue.
Yeah.
And you know, when you're here live and you're able to watch the teams, they were just simply overmatched everybody. Both ends of the floor.
Yep.
They could have won just from their defense or just from their offense. They were so balanced this year.
Dan Hurley said, we're bulletproof. Elite offense, elite defense. What does this say about Dan Hurley to go back-to-back 15 years as a high school coach and to get UConn to the top of the college basketball world for the second year in a row?
I know Alabama and Purdue, they probably wish that that plane was on time to pick up UConn, because when Danny Hurley got off that plane at whatever, 3 o'clock in the morning, 1:30 in the morning, he was not a happy man. And I said, somebody's in trouble. And he used every situation to motivate his team.
He did.
You know, when we're being disrespected, they're counting us out. Man, he played that card extremely right, and they came here and took care of business.
How about Dan Hurley in the home, the Hurley home? I mean, his dad, Bobby, won back-to-back titles in 91-92 for Duke. I mean, this is incredible, that basketball family, what they've accomplished.
It's really an amazing journey for him, because if you think about his life, his dad was arguably the greatest high school coach ever. Then his brother comes along, and he's one of the greatest point guards in the history of college basketball. And then Dan had to really find his identity, and that's the crazy thing about life, is now in the hierarchy of the family, he may be sitting at the head of the table.
And he wins a championship, just so happened in the city where his brother's the coach at Arizona State. So tonight, Danny Hurley is on top of the Hurley family.
Domination and superstition leads UConn to the tippy top of the college basketball world for the second year in a row. Dan Hurley, how about this? Coaches to win back-to-back titles in the past 60 years, John Wooden, Coach K, Billy Donovan, and now Dan Hurley. They're the third team in the last 50 years.